What's growing on, gardeners? It's Sunday, October 15th, and the fall chill is in the air here officially on the southeastern coast of North Carolina, but that is not going to stop us from growing big. That's why on today's video, I'm going to show you how to use fabric grow bags to grow the container garden of your dreams for a fraction of the price of using hard plastic containers.
If you're new to the channel, please subscribe and hit the bell to receive new video notifications, and check out our Amazon store and Spreadshop links in the video description for everything I use in my garden and awesome custom designed apparel and other gear. Your support is greatly appreciated.
If you follow my channel, you know that I am a huge fan of container gardening, hence my extensive container gardening collection. I love container gardening because you can grow a wide variety of different things in a relatively small footprint, and also by container gardening, it allows me to push my growing zone by growing fruit trees in pots that otherwise wouldn't be able to survive in ground here long term because of our relatively cold winters. So whether you own acres and acres of land or a teeny tiny residential plot, there can be many great reasons for you to start a container garden. That being said, not everything is sunshine and rainbows when it comes to container gardening. For example, container gardens have a higher cost of maintenance. That's because container gardens require more fertilizer and more irrigation because they are more likely to wash out and dry out. More on that later. However, by far the largest barrier of entry to container gardens is the cost of the containers themselves. These hard plastic containers, especially when they get to these large sizes, like these 15-gallon containers that you see right here, can become quite pricey. Well, that is where the fabric grow bags come in. Because they are made out of a felt-like material, they collapse very easily, so they are super cheap to manufacture and ship. In fact, I have a 12-pack of 20-gallon fabric grow bags right here, and it costs less than 2 of these 15-gallon containers. That is a massive savings, and it tears down that barrier of entry for new container gardeners. So in this video, I'm going to show you exactly how to use these fabric grow bags, when it is most appropriate to use them, and when they don't work out so well and you may want to stick to these hard plastic containers instead in a few different circumstances. And to make things easy, I'm also going to provide direct links down in the video description to the exact grow bags and plastic containers that I'm featuring in this video, so that way you can get yourself some that I can vouch for the quality if you decide you want to start your own container garden. Tip number 1. Proper sizing of fabric grow bags to grow annual vegetables. When it comes to purchasing your fabric grow bags, the smallest grow bags that I'm willing to purchase are 3-gallon grow bags, and they are perfect for plants like pepper plants and also annual herbs like your basil or parsley or cilantro or dill, things like that. They tend to grow very well in 3-gallon containers. After the 3-gallon grow bags, I like to stock 7-gallon grow bags, and I find that these are the perfect size for growing dwarf tomato project tomatoes and determinate style tomatoes. So your bush style determinates that grow to a predetermined height, and also your dwarf tomato project tomatoes that tend to max out at about 3 feet tall. The 7-gallon fabric grow bags are perfect for them. 7-gallon is also a very good size for growing smaller fruited eggplant plants as well. Now, if you want to grow larger fruited eggplants, 10-gallon grow bags are going to be better because your eggplants can grow to be fairly large, so they will need a larger reservoir for moisture. But by far the most common size that I stock are 20-gallon. I find that the 20-gallon sizes are perfect for your indeterminate tomatoes like you see right here. This tomato plant is almost 9 months old and it's 12 feet tall. It's a big beef tomato and it has been growing all season in this 20-gallon grow bag. The 20-gallon bags are also perfect for things like squash, melon, cucumbers, growing potatoes, growing sweet potatoes. If they need a lot of room, the 20-gallon grow bags are ideal. They're also great for growing numerous heads of lettuce, for growing cabbage. They give you enough depth so you can grow carrots that are perfectly straight because you need a fair amount of soil for the carrots to punch down into, and that is very soft and pliable to grow very straight and not have those kinks and ridges in them. So for all-purpose gardening, when all else fails, go with the 20-gallon size, and of course you could always go larger, 25-gallon, 30-gallon. They even make 50s and 100s if you can handle them. They get to be about the size of a small kiddie pool. The second tip to successfully use fabric grow bags is to change their placement to create suitable microclimates. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, up this teepee right here, I was growing melons and sweet potatoes, which I just removed over the past week because the season is now officially over here. Well, melons and sweet potatoes love sweltering, hot, humid sun. So because of that, I have them growing out on this fabric weed barrier right here, which is black and attracts additional heat, and it gets 10 to 12 hours of uninterrupted sun throughout the summer in my yard. So because of that, they like being blasted with excessive heat, humidity, and sun. But my tomato plants, on the other hand, don't like full sun here in the dead of summer. That's why I have them growing underneath the eave of my sunroom. You see, too much sun on my tomato plants stresses them out, and the heat stress weakens them, and then they become overwhelmed by pests and disease because the pests and diseases can sense the stressed out tomato plants. So while the tomato plants do enjoy full sun here where I live in April and early May, come mid-May when the sun gets really hot, I can move them underneath the eave of my sunroom, and that reduces the total amount of direct sunlight they get from 12 hours a day to only 6, and it has had a dramatically beneficial effect on their overall health. And that is the beauty of the fabric grow bags. You can shift them around the yard as needed. So you can start your tomato plants out in full sun, and then you can move them into part shade when it starts getting too hot. And this technique isn't just good for heat protection, it's also good for cold protection. You see, behind me is the south-facing wall of my house. All day, the sun is tracking up against the south-facing wall, so it absorbs that sun all day and then it radiates the heat back at night. It also does a perfect job at blocking the cold north wind. So because of this, the south wall of my house is an artificial microclimate. We usually get frost here sometime around November 10th, give or take. However, it usually won't frost within 4 feet of my house until after Christmas because it keeps things so artificially warm. So I am able to take advantage of that microclimate to grow things later into the season by pulling the grow bags up against the south face of my wall in order to get additional warmth. For example, a lot of these trees that you see right here are either going to go into dormancy or they are going to migrate into my sunroom for the winter. And when that happens, this whole south-facing wall is going to open up. So I'm going to take my grow bags and I'm going to place them up against this warm wall, and I'm going to sow romaine lettuce in those grow bags because it is frost tolerant, but it doesn't really like a hard freeze. So using this microclimate, I will be able to grow huge heads of fresh romaine lettuce all winter long that otherwise wouldn't be able to tolerate the open air conditions out in my garden. So you don't need to keep your container garden in the exact same spot all year long. You can move them as necessary depending on what time of year it is and what you're growing. And luckily, the fabric grow bags make this very easy because they have these strong handles on them that you can use to pick up the grow bags and relocate them as necessary. Tip number 3 is longevity. How long can you expect your fabric grow bags to last? Well, obviously this is going to vary based on if you leave them outside all year round and what the climate is like where you grow. So if you live in a place with brutally hot sun, they're obviously not going to last as long as a place with much gentler sun. Now here in the southeast, on the North Carolina coast, I'm probably somewhere in between, being more on the strong side of sun. We're not quite Florida, we're not quite Phoenix, we're not quite the southern half of Texas, but we definitely have more powerful sun than most of the United States. So for that reason, I'm probably going to have an advanced rate of decay of my bags compared to most. Now for me, I've been using these for, I believe, 6 years, and they sit outside all year round, and this one finally ripped on me. And for the record, it wouldn't have ripped if I weren't being careless. I grabbed this and I pulled it when the bag was sopping wet, and therefore very heavy, so it tore on me, unfortunately, and now it has to be replaced. If I weren't being so rough on them, I'm sure it would have lasted a couple more years, but unfortunately, because I was careless, I paid the price. So even with me being a little bit neglectful, I still got 6 years out of this bag. And it looks like this one is also starting to develop a small hole in it. Again, these are the same age, and these are all the 24/7 Garden brand that I often recommend in my Amazon storefront. That's a really great run, 6 years on them. So now I'm going to replace that ripped up fabric grow bag with the new fabric grow bags that I just purchased. This is the Phi-X brand that I bought for an unbelievable price on the Amazon Prime big deal days. I couldn't say no. So I'm going to swap the soil out and I'll be able to compare the two side by side. Now comparing the 24/7 Garden brand right here to the Phi-X brand right here, this one was literally half the price of this one, at least on the sale, but they seem to be the same rough material quality. The thickness of the felt feels to be about the same. Maybe the 24/7 Garden brand is a little bit more heavy duty, so that could explain the additional cost quite a bit. In terms of the handle, this handle is stitched with white, whereas this handle is stitched with black, but obviously that doesn't matter. And in terms of the ability to pick it up, this one is so heavy. This one, by comparison, is so light. So it's not a direct comparison because this soil is so fluffy and light and this is so heavy and dense. But for the price, really impressed with the quality. It seems to be pretty close to be on par, probably about 90% as good as the 24/7 brand. No matter what, I will link to both of them down in the video description for your convenience if you want to investigate either one of them a little bit more. Tip 4 is the potting mix that you use inside of these grow bags. Now, hear me loud and clear. When it comes to potting mix, it is very important that you don't skimp on the quality of the potting mix. So you want a potting mix that has a very high percentage in either peat moss or coco coir, no matter which one you prefer. Choose the one that is most appropriate for your needs and your preference. Now, the reason why this is so important is in the heat of the summer, these bags, because they're made out of felt, they have excellent drainage and aeration, but they will work against you when it comes to drying out. The hot days of the summer are going to require daily watering of these fabric grow bags. If you live in a particularly gnarly summer climate like Phoenix or Las Vegas or something, I wouldn't be surprised if you'd have to water these twice. So when the plants are big and mature here in North Carolina in our summers, I have to water them every single day, and I have to water them in the morning because we usually don't get our rains until the afternoon, and by the time the afternoon thunderstorms start, it will be too late. So it's very important that you use as much of a heavy peat or a heavy coir mix as possible to maintain moisture throughout the day. Don't skimp. Now, when it comes to an ideal potting mix, I generally recommend that you make your own because it will save you a lot of money. So I'm going to link to a video in the description where I show you how to make a super high quality premium potting mix for a fraction of the price of pre-made potting mix. All of the potting soil that I use, I make by myself. But that being said, if you don't mind spending more money and you want the pre-made mix, you want to use something like HP Pro Mix or a very high quality peat-rich potting soil. Tip number 5, mulch and drip irrigation are both critical when using these grow bags. Again, hear me loud and clear, when the hot days of the summer roll in, these really nice aerated grow bags will work against you and they will dry out quickly. So it is very important that you place at least a 2 to 3 inch layer of mulch on top of all of the grow bags to try to minimize evaporation as much as possible and preserve the precious moisture inside of these bags. And of course, I also highly recommend drip irrigation because you will more than likely be watering these every day, maybe even twice a day in some locations. Once the dog days of summer gets here, being able to just turn a spigot or flick a switch is going to save you all sorts of time. Now look, if you only have 1 or 2 grow bags, it's not a big deal to hand water, but if you have dozens of them like I do, it's really worth your time to set up the drip irrigation. I have a massive monumental playlist that is super descriptive on where you can buy all of your drip irrigation parts and how to assemble any kind of drip irrigation, and I will make sure to link down in the video description to that playlist where I have a very detailed guide on how to install drip irrigation to all of your containers. Installing drip irrigation on containers is really easy. Tip number 6 is fertilizing. Simply put, one of the harsh realities about container gardens is you need to fertilize them more frequently than an in-ground garden. That's because in-ground gardens can hold the fertilizers that you put down for a relatively long period of time. Your grow bags, on the other hand, are going to wash out anytime it gets a heavy rain or you accidentally over-irrigate. You will constantly be flushing the nutrients out of those grow bags. So for that reason, they need to be fertilized more frequently than an an in-ground garden. Also, in an in-ground garden, the roots of the plants can search through a practical infinity of the earth to try and find macronutrients and micronutrients. But when it comes to your container garden, all that the roots can get are what are in those containers. So when they run dry of nutrients, the plants will start going into decline. So it is very important that you fertilize them early and often. Now, when it comes to fertilizing your grow bags, I can't tell you exactly what to give them and exactly how often, because that's going to depend what you're going to grow. Obviously, the needs of a tomato plant is different than the needs of a head of lettuce. But that being said, I'll give you these general rules of thumb. In my in-ground garden, I typically fertilize about twice a month, or roughly every 2 weeks. When it comes to my container gardens, I fertilize them more like every 7 to 10 days. And here's the harsh reality about your container gardens. I don't fertilize my container gardens 100% organically. That's because of the flushing out problem. You see, your in-ground garden beds have an extensive microbiome. They're full of worms and other invertebrates and fungi and bacteria and all kinds of great beneficial microbes that can help break down those granular organic fertilizers. Well, your grow bags don't really have that. There isn't an extensive microbiome in there. There's no worms, there's no invertebrates, there's very limited fungi and bacteria and such to consume granulated organic fertilizers. So for that, I find that while I still do use some granular organics, I do need to supplement them with water-soluble fertilizers. And the organic water-soluble fertilizers are just really expensive. So for that, I predominantly use Jack's 20-20-20, which is not organic because it's the only way I can make the cost work out in my mind. So because of that, that is generally the type of fertilizing that I recommend. If you're going to grow completely in containers, I think you're going to have to add some type of water-soluble fertilizer for best results. And if you want to make it as affordable as possible, you're going to probably have to go the water-soluble route. And that's not really a big deal because as long as you're not abusing them, it's not going to hurt anything. And tip number 7, rehabilitating your containers. You're going to have to rehab them to some degree before you plant a new crop in them. And if you look, I had Kajari melons growing in here and I had butternut squash growing in here. And these are beat up. They need to have all of the roots pulled out and they're going to need to be renutrified with some fresh mix, some fresh compost, etc. Now in my in-ground garden, I generally try to minimize the amount of soil disturbance by ripping out roots because I like to preserve that fungal layer that takes all season to build up. I don't like ripping out gaping holes in my garden soil. But in your containers, again, you're not really going to get that extensive microbiome. So I just have to deal with the fact that I'm going to get in there real deep and mix everything up when it comes time to re-amend them. Now, when it comes to re-amending them, I have a whole detailed video on how you can supercharge them for a new growing season. So again, I will link to that in the video description. I know there's a lot of video description links, but I can't explain everything that there is in a 15 or so minute video, but I can in about an hour. So if you're willing to look at those other links, you will know everything there is to know about growing in containers, and from there it's just a matter of accumulating experience. Now that I've discussed all the different reasons why you want to grow in fabric grow bags, we have to discuss when you don't want to grow in fabric grow bags. Now, I've been growing in grow bags every year for the last 7 or 8 years, and I have learned a lot about growing in them. I've also learned what you don't want to grow in them. And you definitely do not want to grow fruit trees in them or other perennials that will be in there for a long period of time. They are fantastic for annual vegetables, but not good for fruit trees or really any other kind of tree or perennial. And here's why. The grow bags are made out of a heavy-duty felt-like material, and the roots of whatever you grow in there are eventually going to weave themselves into that felt. And it's not a big deal with your annual vegetables because at the end of the year you're going to rip them out, you're going to rip out the roots. The problem is when it comes time to remove the fabric grow bag from a perennial or a tree, it's going to rip off all of those roots. You're going to have a horrible time trying to get that fabric grow bag off, and it may kill the tree. In fact, I lost 2 trees because I decided I was going to plant them in a fabric grow bag. I grew 2 date palms from seed. They were looking beautiful. I went to up-pot them, but when I removed them, they created so much extensive root damage in the move that it killed the trees. Also, the other problem I had was the hard wooden roots punched their way through the sides of the fabric grow bag, which made it even worse. They're not made to handle those heavy-duty, thick roots. And eventually, when the roots lignify and become like wood, they're going to punch their way through the fabric grow bags, and you're going to have a miserable time trying to get them off. Now, maybe you're thinking, well, I'm going to keep my tree forever in this fabric grow bag. Well, you're not going to, because it's only a matter of time until you will have to remove it, either to up-pot it or to root prune it and rejuvenate the tree, because eventually it's going to get pretty tired when it's growing in a container. And when you do that, I promise you, you are going to want a high-quality, hard plastic container. They are more expensive for a reason. They just have more longevity, and that's why I now only grow my trees in these UV-resistant 10 to 20-year containers. They are worth the price when it comes to growing your trees. Now, some of you may be naysayers and you don't like what I just said. You may be saying, I've been growing trees in fabric grow bags for years and I've never had a problem. Well, let me ask you a question. If fabric grow bags were the exact same cost per size as the hard UV-resistant nursery containers, would anybody grow a tree in them? And of course, the answer to that is going to be overwhelmingly no. There may be some niche reason why maybe it's a good idea one time out of 100, but 99% of the time, the only reason why people are growing trees in fabric grow bags is to skimp and cut costs. That's the only real reason why. And it may be okay a few times. You might get lucky, especially if it is with a deciduous tree, because you can then technically remove the bag when it is fully dormant in the winter and root prune it, and it probably won't stress out the tree. But if it's an evergreen tree, or if it's a tree that is not in deep dormancy, it is only a matter of time until you suffer losses. Learn from me, it's not worth it in that regard. And that right there is pretty much everything you need to know to get you started growing in fabric grow bags to build the container garden of your dreams. And like I said, for all of the bags and other products that I listed in this video, I'll make sure to place direct links to them down in the video description for your convenience, as well as some other supplemental links to other videos that I've made about container gardening over the years. So everybody, I sure hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and please ring that notification bell so you're notified when I release more videos like these. Again, if you're curious about anything I use in real life in my garden, they are all linked down below in my Amazon storefront link in the video description. And while you're there, check out my spread shop for custom merch if you want to support the channel. Thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to see all of you again on the next video.
Dale's having trouble chewing because he's in his cone for his hurt paw. So he can't chew anything because he can't hold anything since it blocks his paws. So I'm holding his yak milk chew, giving him something nice to bite on. And he is going to town. All this chewing, it's great for them to de-stress, and it's good for their teeth. It cleans their teeth. And he is really chomping on that thing. 4 more days, Dale, until the cone comes off. 4 more days.